Welcome, everyone, to the Win Now podcast, hosted by Deborah Byrd, founder and CEO of Plug and Play SM.
I am so excited for today's show, so let's go.
And then myself, Todd Bookspan, founder of Win by Noon. But I think if you keep approaching each week like, oh boy, let's just see if it's rainbows and unicorns and I do everything right. Oh gosh, I really hope that I make enough phone calls to get where I'm trying to go. Then you're just going to live in fairy tale land and probably not have the business that you want.
I was thinking about my conversation with my daughter last week where she was so overwhelmed because she chose to take pre-cal, which is a full year, crammed it in a summer course. And so she wanted to quit. She's rambling off all these things that she's just so overwhelmed with. I told her what you need to do is get your calendar out, pick the top 3 things that you need to do each day before noon, come hell or high water, you're getting those things done.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Win Now podcast. We are going to talk about the 3 pitfalls of why people aren't winning now. And I am super excited. I'm Todd Bookspan. I am the co-host, founder of Win by Noon, and I'm joined by
Deborah Byrd, the CEO and founder of Plug and Play SM. And for those of you who are listening to this, you need to go jump to YouTube and watch Todd's attempt of the Deb dance at the start. It's like a fist pump motion.
Listen, one of these days I'll get it down. It's one of the highlights, I think, of recording this with you, Deb, is that when I'm doing the introduction, you are doing the fist pump dance. And I think one of the challenges is that Club 44 here, my beautiful attic that I broadcast out of, is only 4 feet wide. So I'm limited in the depth of my space here. So that's going to be my excuse for now, that. And I've got 2 left feet and no rhythm. So I'm embarrassed to admit that here, but
we all have pitfalls, okay? We can't all be perfect.
We far from it. And I really excited about the conversation today, right? I'm literally just today in an hour wrapping up 12 weeks of coaching a group of loan officers. I've really enjoyed the experience because it's a mixture, right? My group coaching was 1/3 people in the business for less than a year, 1/3 people who've been in the business for more than a year and struggling to do 5 loans consistently, and 1/3 we're crushing it, doing 5 loans consistently a month. And so I get to see a lot. And then you and I get to interview top producers, coaches every week on the Loan Officer Mastermind, Friday Mastermind that we record every Friday. It's also available for you who are loan officers listening to this over on all the podcast platforms as well. So I'd encourage you, if you're looking to learn in the loan officer specific piece versus here where we talk to anyone in sales. But I think what I learned from that group and from these other interviews, I think is super applicable across all sales and really the 3 big pitfalls I'm seeing.
I'm really curious. That was what launched us into this session today. Is I was after the first half of the year, and really once July 4th hits, typically the market starts to slow down just a bit. And so I was thinking about your 90-day operating 2.0 group that you had, and just what were some of the common patterns that you saw, not only with this group, but just you've been doing this since the dinosaurs existed. So what patterns?
Just about. That's why I have this gray hair. It's not just because I don't apparently have enough copper. It's just because I've been around
for a deficiency, I'm telling you. But I'm curious, you've coached a lot of different elite performers, some that are new and early risers. Let's start with the first pitfall that you see of what's getting in the way from people winning right now.
I think it's not planning out your week, not having what I would call an ideal week. I don't believe in a perfect week. I believe in an ideal week. And that's literally sitting down Sunday, early Monday, whatever that is, and literally just getting out your phone and looking at your appointments for the week and looking at what you've already committed to. Darren Hardy would call it a calibration meeting. You're really just looking at your week and saying, okay, do I have the appointments that are on my calendar? Are they actually going to drive me towards my goals? And then what is it I ideally need to be doing this week if I'm trying to reach those goals? And I think ultimately what happens is when you look at those appointments, they tend to be things that other people have asked of you. And you just have to say, hey, was that a good idea to schedule that? Yes or no. And then if it's not a good idea, you have to actually be okay saying, you know what, I'm sorry, Deb, I can't meet this week. Could I bump it out another week or 2? Because maybe it's not that important. For me, just a personal example, this week, I did my ideal week. Look out, I had a chiropractor appointment this afternoon. I said it a few weeks ago when I hurt my back was sore. And I thought, you know what, I got a really busy day. I've got some things I want to accomplish this week. You know what, I don't need that. So it's a want, it's not a need. And so I punted it out a few weeks so that I would actually get back. It's 30-minute appointment, but it's a 30-minute drive to get there, a 30-minute drive home. So I'm going to basically lose 2 hours in order to have that appointment. And I decided it wasn't a huge priority for me, but it also could be a meeting with a coworker. It could be someone that just you want to catch up with. And I think those things are important. And we've talked before about the big rocks. Stephen Covey used to talk about it. You got to put all your personal things in first, because if you try to put the big rocks in last, after the water's in, the sand's in, the pebbles, the medium-sized rocks, they don't fit, right? So you got to figure out what are those priorities. And I think for our audience, people who are in sales, you have to schedule the time to make the lead calls. You got to schedule the time to follow up on the ticky-tacky things that you need. If you're a realtor, it could be your listing paperwork. If you're a financial advisor, it could be that insurance paperwork. It's all those little things that if you don't schedule the time to do it, it just becomes an afterthought. And you get to the end of the day and you say, gosh, you know what? That was important, but I actually didn't accomplish it. So you got to schedule those blocks in there. And I think the biggest one right now, at least for me personally, I'm really trying to determine where I can schedule more thinking time, just time where I'm unplugged, phone off. That's actually like my new mantra. I went to the movies, turned off my phone. It was amazing. I'm like, you know what? I don't feel it buzzing while I'm sitting here. I used to be like, bzz, bzz, oh, that's no big deal. You're not actually present when that's going on. And so I think it's really being intentional around making sure that whatever your sales activities are, they're scheduled. Whatever the follow-up activities are, they're scheduled. Whatever the fun activities are, they're scheduled. And at some point, well, that just sounds like you're a robot if you're working off a calendar. But in the end, I'd rather be a robot working off my calendar than being someone who actually fails to accomplish the things that I think are important because I was not disciplined enough to actually work the important things I needed to accomplish. So I think you have to look at your calendar, set up your ideal week, and be intentional around it. And then the last thing I'll say before I take a breath and let you comment and give your brilliant 2 cents is you got to have a lot of white space in there, because you do have to have time to react. You can't schedule out 8 straight hours of this. You got to actually leave in 30-minute blocks to check your email, or 30-minute blocks to return calls, or maybe that's even an hour block to check emails and return calls, depending on the business that you're in.
I feel like as you were talking, I was thinking about my conversation with my daughter last week, where she was so overwhelmed because she chose to take pre-cal, which is a full year crammed in a summer course, and health. And she has a performance course camp, and she's trying to work, and she has volleyball. And so she wanted to quit. She asked me, like, can I just drop it? I'm like, why? What made you sign up for it in the first place? And so long story short, she can't quit because then she can't take calculus when the school year starts. So as she's rambling off all these things that she's just so overwhelmed with, I told her, I was like, what you need to do is get your calendar out, pick the top 3 things that you need to do each day before noon, Monday through Friday, where come hell or high water, you're getting those things done. Because I just saw you spend 4 hours deep cleaning your room, reorganizing your closet, when that wasn't a have to. You're distracted and you're trying to avoid the work so you can keep telling yourself the story. And when you list everything out, no wonder you're overwhelmed. Get the planner out, write the shit down so you have it time blocked and you can mark it off. You like my parenting, Todd? I'm
I
like,
like your parenting. Your parenting is good. Your parenting is good. But I think it's the conversations we want to have, right? As a coach, you want to come alongside somebody. And sometimes you feel like you got to kick them in the ass. And sometimes you feel like you I don't know, you got to be nice, right? So that's the challenge of it. How do you come alongside someone and do it the right way? But I think in the end, it's as I always joke, I recorded one of my walk and talks this morning, and I'm pointing, and I realized the reason I point is I'm not pointing at you who's listening and watching. I'm pointing at myself, because I'm always talking to myself. Everything that I do is just a reminder to myself. And the systems that I created is because I needed to create boundaries and a system for me to be able to work. Someone who's borderline ADD, someone who gets easily distracted like everyone else, someone who would prefer to be sitting at the beach drinking a beer versus sitting at a desk and working. But the bottom line is that when I sit at my desk and work, then it actually frees up the time where I could go sit at the beach and drink a beer. And so if you have to really think through, what does your week look like, and are you being intentional around your calendar, and are the things that right? Because again, when you do business planning, and this isn't that what this call is about, but you know what your goal is, and then you got to do these tasks in order to get there. But if those tasks aren't scheduled, it's just not likely they're going to get done. Or maybe they get done, but they get done inconsistently. And I think consistency is such a key right now that most people are missing. It's boring, but I actually think that the people who focus on the boring, consistent things, ironically, are the ones who are winning.
and that's it. And the more that you just rattle off everything you have to do, that overwhelming feeling never goes away. And I asked her, I'm like, do you enjoy listing all of those things off? Because sometimes I wonder, are you addicted to chaos and stress, like pressure? So you will delay, and so that it can be high stress and pressure situations. So anyways, I told her, I was like, you do realize the reason why I can identify this is because it's like looking in a mirror. It's the same thing. You see me do it all the time. And my go-to is cleaning. I have to have a clean room, because otherwise if it's chaotic in my room, then it's chaotic in here. I'm like, you are a mini me in some ways.
Think it totally makes sense though, right? Again, where you have to figure out in your life where you want to have discipline, right? For some people, it's like they got to keep their lawn mowed and they got to mow it multiple times a week. By the way, people, I've never heard about that, but Deborah's mowing her lawn 3 times a week. I don't,
Bermuda grass in the warm season, look it up.
yeah, that's just crazy. But I think that's really key. I was just looking if anyone's watching, you were wondering what's Todd looking for, and I was looking for a quote from the recent Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett interviewing Alex Hermosi, because number two is not tracking your numbers, right? Not having a scoreboard. You got to have a scoreboard. But I thought it was interesting. He said, fear only exists in the vague. And so I think that's true, right? When it comes to your calendar, when it comes to the activities you need to do, I think the reason that a lot of people don't find the success that they're shooting for is because they haven't figured out what are my conversion rates? How many of that thing do I need to do? Of that activity do I have to do to get to the result that I want? And it's not rocket science. It's just rocket science for you to figure out what it is that I have to do. And I talk a lot about Christian Stubbs. He's a leader at Onyx Homes. If you're not following him, you should check him out. But real estate agents, you guys have it made for you if you work on a team where you use a system like Follow Up Boss that records all of your activities for you. I think those of you who are individual agents or those of you who are loan officers who aren't using a CRM that tracks all that, you unfortunately have to be the machine that does it. That's why I created Win by Noon. I needed to be able to record my activities and track my results. But in the end, the scoreboard tells the story. It tells the story of every day, am I on track? And it tells the story at the end of the year. And I just don't ever want to be the person who gets to the end of the year, set a goal, and is wondering why I didn't get there, right? It's one thing if I don't get there and I put in the work and it was just, I didn't convert like I should. But it's a different thing, I think, if you're not keeping score and then you get there and you're like, oh, that's really weird. Blinding flash of the same thing that happened last year. I hit half my goals and I just woke up every day and did random stuff.
It takes me back to when I worked at a family law firm when you had to track every activity. And I was part of billing and replenishing retainers. So we would even go into their emails and look at all the sent emails. We'd look at their call log. So even if you just left a book, everything had to be documented. So you could charge to the point two, point three, point one, and have that CVS receipt to justify the bill. But I often would wonder if salespeople did this, largely loan officers, real estate agents, if you really had to document and there was a dollar associated with everything you did. And for the attorneys, we had a minimum standard of 6 billable hours a day. A lot of the big firms are like 8 minimum billable hours. Would you meet your quota?
So this is great. I love it. I love what you're saying. So again, let me bring up Christian Stubbs. So he did like a mid-year report for the folks on what their activities look like. And their average agent, it was 44 appointments to one deal. And for them, an appointment was on Zoom or in person, a buyer strategy session. And then an appointment was opening one door, showing one house. So between those two activities, if they did it 44 times, it resulted in $500 of gross commission for the average agent. And so then I always love it, right? Part of the reason that on Win by Noon that we actually have you track the dials you make is because Mick on my team said, Todd, I want to know how much money I make every time I pick up the phone. For them, it was 74 conversations equaled a deal. A conversation for them was a conversation with a client that was 2 minutes or longer on the phone. And so that meant that every conversation was worth $300. And so I thought, gosh, that is really amazing to me to think about that every time you talk to somebody, it's worth $300, whether that person chooses you or not. And so that goes to what you're saying, right? If you think through it, if you know your numbers that well, if you literally could tell, like I can tell you right here in my planner, I can tell you that I dialed 11 clients and 3 realtors yesterday. I talked to 25 people. I was with 16 realtors on one Zoom and 3 realtors on another Zoom. And so that was a lot of activity yesterday that I had, but I can actually get to the end of the year when I add up all these numbers and I can say, gosh, every time I dialed the phone, that was worth $50 or $75. It's a bigger number than you would ever imagine. The problem is it's not showing up in our bank account like in a law firm where a voicemail apparently is worth 0.2 of an hour. I saw that. My dad used to have little slips as an attorney and he'd bring them home a month and he'd sort it out by client. Like, whoa, every 10 minutes, they bill in 6-minute increments. And so you as a salesperson, you do the same. The challenge is your result, your reward, the closed sale is way further out. And so you're not good at connecting the dots. And so if we can get good at that by understanding what our numbers look like, to me, that is great. And the cool part about it was he also showed that the people who actually are better at it, who've worked on their skills, who understand their numbers, like one agent, she was only 28 conversations to get a deal. So for her, every conversation was $900. And then she opened a door, it was 35 appointments, it was $740. And the bottom line is activity leads to results. And what they're seeing this year in their real estate firm is that a 50% increase in activity because they score points in there. They used to, so their standard was 20,000 points. And now the people who are at 30,000 points year to date, their income is triple the rest of the crew. So 50% more effort, triple. So that's my personal mantra for the second half of the year. I'm keeping score and I'm pushing my numbers up 50% from the first half of the year to see if I can replicate that in the mortgage space. So I think it's really powerful when you understand your numbers to figure out where you're trying to go. And you just don't know if you're not getting there. You're just, unfortunately, just guessing.
Okay, so number one was not having a plan, not knowing your ideal week. Number two is not having a scoreboard or tracking your numbers. What's number three?
Number three is not reviewing it at the end of the week. So it's just the bookends to it. Literally, all I'm talking about is what you do to plan your week, track what you do during the week, and at the end of the week, look back and say, how did I do? How did I do and what went wrong? I'm coached by a guy named Jonathan Roach. We just did a great interview with him a couple months ago on our Friday Loan Officer Mastermind, and I had to do a mid-year race report for him. So Jonathan coaches, he won't say who he coaches, but he coaches 3 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. He coaches some guys in the NBA, coaches 2 of the top 10 golfers in the world, and everyone has to do this same homework. It's a mid-race report. Like, where did I do well? Where didn't I do well? I should just pull up the questions and then I would sound much more intelligent on it, because I literally just went over it with them yesterday. But it was what went well, what didn't go well, 3 key lessons and takeaways, and number 4 was key adjustments. And so think about that. So I did it for him. I looked at it from a personal perspective. I looked at it from a business perspective in each of my businesses. And of course, because I'm a money guy, I looked at it from my financial perspective. Like, how am I doing financially? And then I had to read it to him and I had to then discuss it with them. And so really it's just looking back at that week and saying, okay, you know what? My commitment. So for me, for years, it's been to talk to 50 real estate agents a week. Right. That's recently switched a little bit to 50 quality conversations a week between clients, because my team has a lot of referrals and I've been helping them on that. And really, I've just really pushed that up. So I'm pushing it up, going up to 75. So last week it was 77, and I'm going to see if that consistency works. But the bottom line is, if I don't review it, I don't add up the numbers, and then I just look at my week, like, did the other things that I wanted to do personally and professionally happen? Did I have date night with Tara? Did I get one-on-one time with Giselle? Did I go see my grandkid and spend time with him? Did I spend time with Lacey and Kyle, my grandkids' parents, my daughter and son-in-law? What are those things? Who are the other people that I want to talk to? Did I reach out to a friend I haven't talked to in a while and connect and catch up? There's other things that are important to me personally that also make the list each week. But again, I don't think, if you're not really reviewing it, so really just think about the bookends of your week and what are you doing in the middle. And I think if you're actually being intentional about your week, you're keeping score during the week, and then you're looking at it and say, how did I do? And again, you can't beat yourself up. If you didn't crush it this week, okay, then what is the key adjustment I need to make for next week to make sure that happens? And I think if you do that week in and week out, and then take a deeper dive at the end of a month or at the end of a quarter, then I think you're going to win and you're going to crush the rest of the year. But I think if you keep approaching each week like, oh boy, let's just see if it's rainbows and unicorns and I do everything right. No, gosh, I really hope that I make enough phone calls to get where I'm trying to go. And oh my gosh, I think I did okay this week, but I don't know. And then you're just going to live in fairy tale land and probably not have the business that you want. You're just probably going to get lucky. Darren Hardy always said that 94% of salespeople go in the office with no plan for their day, and 90% have inconsistent month-over-month business. So there are a few percent of you who are listening to this who do show up with no plan and actually do okay. But I don't know that's those of you who are taking time to listen to this. Maybe those are the people that are sitting on the beach drinking a beer right now, maybe listening to our podcast, which we're really grateful for.
Okay, so what's the taking action, small baby step that anyone listening right now could easily do after listening to this?
I think you have to have a paper calendar. If you want to try Win by Noon, go to winbynoon.com, do the quarterly subscription, use trial 26. It'll send you the first one for free. You do have to set up a subscription. You can always, super easy to cancel. You just email us. We're going to still be friends if you canceled it, but you have to have some kind of calendar, or just go buy a calendar that you can flip through. Maybe you got a free one in the mail or something like that, but you got to look at your week for next week and just look at that and spell it out. I think the ideal week is going to be the important thing, and then get a piece of paper and think about what are the activities that you're going to record each week. That's going to be, to me, dials and texts, not like mass dials and mass texts, is one-on-one dials and texts. Track your quality conversations where you actually connect with somebody, and you can use the 2-minute rule that a lot of the real estate teams use. For me, it's just really, did I exchange information that was valuable, which sometimes could only be a minute or two, and then who did I meet with, and then look at the results on the other side, whatever it is for your business: leads, applications, meetings, buyer agreements, and then close transactions, right? Look through that stuff. And I think the bottom line is to get to the end of the week and you review that, then you're crushing it. So that's the baby step, but you got to start with a calendar, unfortunately.
And I just want to highlight that it's not just the results. That's what I love about the Win by Noon system is it tracks activity. So that way you do know what you can turn up or turn down, or look at conversion rates to see what you could do more or less of to then get the results that you're after. So make sure you're tracking activities and results.
Inputs over outputs. I just heard Jeff Bezos had a quote on that. He said he was focusing on the inputs, not the outputs. And I think that's really important, right? It goes right along with activity and results, but it's the inputs. What are you inputting in to get there? And bottom line is, if you're not getting to the results that you want, the outcomes that you want, unfortunately, you got to check up on the inputs. Super grateful for all of you for listening. Very excited. If you didn't listen to Deborah's top things that she learned from forward from last episode, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. That was lots of gold in that one, Deborah. And as always, if you're one of the few people who's listening to this who hasn't subscribed, we would love it if you just hit that follow button in whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, or if you're looking at it on YouTube, we would love you to subscribe there as well. And maybe share with a friend. You know, you have a friend who could use a little kick in the ass, and this three
A little love
pitfalls.
tap, love tap. I kick
All
in
right.
the love tap.
All right. I love that. Thanks for the course correction, Deborah.
Okay, guys, so all you have to do is win now.